Welcome back. This week marks the 5th year since the flood of 2016. The flood waters affected many in multiple counties in our viewing area. We're going to look at the devastation, but also the resilience of West Virginians. And the town of White Sulphur Springs is an example of that.
White Sulphur Springs is a small town, tight-knit community. Everybody knows everybody, or they know someone who's connected to someone else. And it always felt very comfortable. I'm very grateful that I grew up there.
White Sulphur Springs, idyllic, safe, a perfect place to raise a family and create memories. And a place like many in the two Virginias accustomed to rains. But on June 23, 2016, the rains would be unlike any other.
We knew that there was going to be a lot of rain, possibly flooding. White Sulphur had dealt with that, and I guess through my childhood there had been floods and the river would get high, but it never felt scary to me. It never felt overwhelming or deadly. Like, that was never a thought when you would hear about floods or rains. That just was never something that I thought could happen in White Sulphur.
But the force of the rain after it had accumulated on the ground, coming down from the hillsides into the valleys, that was the part that caused the most damage.
The rain over Greenbrier County just kept falling. These storms were training on each other.
They started training or moving over the same areas like a train would down the train tracks. As I saw that afternoon, internally I knew, I said, this is not normal.
The National Weather Service come over the radio and say something that I'd never heard in my experience as a meteorologist, and that was a flash flood emergency has been issued for Greenbrier County.
When you see that get issued, your stomach just kind of drops, because the Weather Service usually doesn't issue those. They only come out if the situation is really significant.
I remember calling my parents that night, and I don't remember which one said this, but they said, I think it's going to be bad. I think this is bad. And hearing them say that, that's what really triggered in my head. If they're concerned, I'm concerned.
White Sulphur Springs would receive rain into the double digits in some areas that night, a night that altered a community forever.
Dad, watch out!
And I actually surveyed the town and the surrounding areas, and that's when I found out how much devastation there really was.
And you go into these neighborhoods that I had driven by 1,000 times, and houses that I had seen 1,000 times, and seeing the X's and seeing them toppled and covered in mud, and it was just shocking.
When you see a house, or at least where a house used to be, there's a foundation, there's steps leading up to the home. Where's the house?
In the aftermath of the devastation was a community, turning to each other and their leaders. The former mayor of White Sulphur Springs and current city manager now grappling with helping those he serves heal, only to be dealt another blow, losing his wife 2 days after the flood.
I said, there are two things, one of two things we can do. We can sit down, twiddle our thumbs and say, why me? Wring our hands. Or we could say, why not me? And figure out how to come out of it.
This is your home. You're not just the mayor. Where'd you find the strength to persevere?
Just by myself, I couldn't have the strength to do it. I just had to lean heavily on my Creator, onto God. And with that, and with the help of, like I say, the staff and friends and neighbors, we all kind of pooled our resources.
Those resources came from everywhere. Immediately following the flood, Bruce Bolden, owner of a store building in White Sulphur Springs since the mid-1980s and current mayor of the town, teamed up with his fellow businessmen and women, serving up basic necessities.
A couple of us decided, let's get together, let's take our gas grills down to the local car lot, and let's just get people to empty out their freezers and refrigerator. We'll just feed everybody.
Resident Kathy Reynard made a complete career shift due to the flood, going to work for West Virginia voluntary organizations active in disaster.
We don't wait for somebody to come and save us typically. We jump in and help our neighbors and help ourselves at the same time and begin to rebuild immediately. That's who we are.
New homes and new neighborhoods like Hope Village stand tall and stand strong. The spirits of those who transcended during the flood of 2016 forever embedded in the place they call home. on street signs, on monuments, and our hearts. The bustle of foot traffic day in and day out is a welcome sight.
And then a lot of other people with means that wanted to help found out that we were trying our best to go forward on our own, and a lot of people that wanted to see White Sulphur Springs spring back even invested in White Sulphur Springs.
The money that has been poured into the town by people who believe in the town and want to see a comeback of a small West Virginia town. So the rebound is absolutely unfathomable.
A bevy of stores line the streets with new ones popping up by the day.
No, it really feels great to be sort of one of the first pebbles to go into the pond to really get the pond rocking and rolling. I mean, it takes a lot of people from the community to some financials to people willing to work and put the blood, sweat, and tears in.
Going the way things are going now, it's going to be hard to find a piece of property in White Sulphur Springs.
We do love our neighbors, and we do show up for our neighbors when they need us, and that is very comforting, and I hope that other people in White Sulphur have that same comfort. The fact that there is even a town and there is a main street to even begin with right now, and that there are homes that people can live in, and there are kids running on streets and sidewalks, like that is just a miracle.
A miracle indeed. You know, the spirit of the people of the two Virginias is one of strength. It is a fierce but kind strength unlike any other. It is hard to define. It is something that has to be witnessed. It is something that has to be felt. But once you experience it, it is something you never forget. I started here 16 days before the flood of 2016 as a reporter for WVVA News, and covering this community, serving this community, being here for you, our community. It is something I know that I take great pride in, and I feel my colleagues, both past and present, do too. The floods of 2016 impacted us all, and here are some of their final thoughts on how it's changed us.
The fact that people are still there, and they are still being kind to each other, and they are still supporting local businesses, and they are playing in the creek that 5 years ago was so devastating and deadly, and the fact that they have found a way to show up and be there, and yeah, it makes you really proud.
The thing that got me the most was the amount of people that were helping. Like I drove into White, it kind of makes me emotional when I think about it. I drive into White Sulphur Springs and I'm looking over at this random parking lot, and this is hours after this has happened. The waters are just, have just gone down, and there's people just throwing out tents. They've got clothes out, they've got food out, they're just handing it out. It was beautiful to see.
But it was not just a moment that changed me, but I think it really impacted our group, and it impacted everybody in Southern West Virginia. I mean, it's something, unfortunately, that a lot of us had to endure. We came together for that benefit concert, and it was just that whole experience, I think, really taught everybody a sense of community and a sense of just, personal safety.
As a meteorologist reporter, if it was a weather-related event, I would go to it, whether it's flooding or any other kind of damage. And most of the time, you would still see that hope in people. And I think that speaks to this area. And because when something would happen, everybody would jump in to help. That's the thing about this area. And I saw that in Greenbrier County that morning. I've seen it in Tazewell County. I've seen it in McDowell County. I've seen those folks come out and work together.
I would just say, give yourself a pat on the back, give yourself some grace too, because especially right now, right around this time of year, I know that a lot of people are going through some really dark times, and they are really struggling, and they're still dealing with the trauma of what happened 5 years ago. So give yourself some grace, but also be proud, because not every town or community could have come together like that and could have got to where they are 5 years later.